These days, everyone's talking about virtual events, but how should you set up a virtual event? How do you make sure you have the right platform to do it? How can you make your own team collaborative, even outside of virtual events? How do you keep that strength and collaboration when everyone's remote? I talked to Matt Compton. He's the CEO and founder of Filo, a fantastic platform. He's at the forefront of all of this virtual learning and keeping the collaboration together. So take a look at this episode. I think you're going to like it.
Welcome to SaaS-Story in the Making, the podcast that features the people who made the software world what it is today and the leaders who are shaping the future of technology. Here's your host, Matt Wolach.
Yes, welcome to SaaS-Story in the Making. I am Matt Wolach. I am your host. I am very glad to have you here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to all of you out there. And I'm especially delighted about my guest today. His name is Matt Compton. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Every time I'm able to join one of these conversations, I learn so much. So really appreciate you putting this together and having me on.
Likewise, I do this, talk with amazing founders and leaders all day, every day with this show, and I'm able to learn a bunch about what their specialty and their expertise is. And you must be pretty amazing because your name, Matt, obviously is the best name. So looking forward to that. Well, cool. Well, let me tell everybody about you, Matt, because you have a lot of great stuff going on. For everybody out there, Matt is the CEO and co-founder of Filo. And this is an organization that helps amazing people come together to create, learn, and solve problems remotely. What it is, it's the most flexible platform for virtual events, meetings, and teams. We're going to dive into what all that means and how it helps and what you can do to improve your situation with your teams and your virtual events. Matt is also the two-time founder and former chief of staff to CEO and SVP revenue operations at Cheetah Digital. And before that, he was with Salesforce, ExactTarget, and IBM. So he has a ton of excellent experience and background within the tech world. So once again, Matt, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited.
Likewise. Well, tell me, what's been going on with you lately and what's coming up?
It's been an incredible year. I mean, we've spent the last year, a little over a year, building a team of people, 2/3 of which I've never even met in person, who wake up every morning and go to bed every single night, obsessed over helping groups get real work done without having to be in the same place. So we're building both a piece of software, a product, and a set of services in order to help that happen, and have had the opportunity to work with some incredible companies so far this year.
Fantastic. Can you just explain a little bit about what Filo does and what gave you the idea to start it?
Yeah, so first, let's start a little bit about why. We talked about we're just, everybody is obsessed over helping people get real work done. That can be creating something brand new, like a company. That could be learning something together that helps everybody be better at what they're doing, or it could be solving some complex problem within the business. We are not a group of people who think everything should be remote. We will always be remote. You should do everything you want out of your office and never have to travel. We are so excited to finally kick this pandemic to the curb, hopefully very, very soon, and to get back and travel. We just don't believe you should have to travel to get work done. We believe travel should be about enjoyment, about building connection, about building relationships with individual people, relationships that happen over dinners and wine or cocktails or lunch or coffee or walks in the park, or common shared experiences. But you just shouldn't have to upend your entire life, be away from your family, miss raising your kids, spend a bunch of money, have worse teams because they're not as diverse, hurt the environment, spend money on travel that should be going in people's pockets simply because you feel like you have to in order to solve a problem. So that's really what we've set out to do, and we've been able to do it through a bunch of different things. You talk a little bit about how we got started. I think we got started a little bit different. Well, I think different than a lot of other companies, and that we didn't set out in April, May of last year and say, hey, how do we build the biggest company possible? How do we build something we can sell a boatload of stuff to some large organizations? How do we take advantage of things in the pandemic? We had a problem. So I was working with an incredible group of human beings in an organization called High Alpha. High Alpha is a venture studio based in Indianapolis, Indiana, that they do traditional venture investing in B2B SaaS software businesses. And they also have a studio arm that starts companies for a living. So they've been around for 5 to 6 years. Have started 30 to 35 companies over those 5 to 6 years, have had just an incredible track record of success in doing so. And they do so through what's really a proven and hammered process that they call Sprint Week. So there you have 60 people, 60 to 80 people, depending on which Sprint Week it is. They identify 4 big problems that exist out in the market that they think if they could solve, could make a real impact and be a sustainable business around. These are real high level ideas like remote work, Zoom, something's missing, right? Go. The 60 to 80 people, you show up on day one. These are finance analysts and CFOs and marketing people and go-to-market and product designers and engineers and executive assistants. So it's a real cross-functional group. You show up day one, you get introduced to your team, you find out who your team is, you're given the idea, you don't know until you show up, and you have 4 days in order to identify the segment of the market that's feeling the problem the most, really identify what the problem is, design a product and solution, and many times build a prototype that will solve that problem for them, figure out how you're going to sell it and take it to market and the support that you need in terms of investment and team and support resources and partners in order to make that happen. And on day 4, you show up and you've got a room of 100 plus people, and it is a Shark Tank style presentation. So you're pitching your company for investment to this group of investors, industry experts, your peers, and you get encouragement and you get very critical feedback and challenging questions. And at the end, they'll typically pick, if there are 4 teams that go through the week, they'll pick one winner, and they'll many times take that winner, match it to an entrepreneur, form a company, put a little seed capital to get you started, and you're off and running. So every one of the 30 to 35 companies have gone through this process. It's this mixed design sprint, hackathon, pitch competition, kind of all into one. And I think it has led to their track record of success. So you're going back to March of last year, and they have one scheduled for May. Everything gets locked down. And when I'm talking to them, and the natural reaction is, oh, we got to cancel. Okay, when are we going to tell people we're going to cancel? This has always been 100% in person. People fly to Indianapolis or San Francisco or Chicago or New York, and they run these sprint weeks in location. Mm-hmm. You lock yourself into a room for 15 straight hours with a group of people every single day in order to hammer this out. Just immediate, we have to cancel. And we talked about it for 30 minutes about how we're going to do this. And then one of us asked, wait, guys, we have video that works. We have incredible point solution, collaboration solutions, everything from chat to project management to virtual whiteboards. We have all the technology we could possibly want. Why do we feel like we have to cancel this? Like, what is it that's missing that we didn't even consider whether or not we could run this virtually? And so we spent at that point, we said, we need to really think about it. We spent about a week debating and researching and figuring out what is it that's missing with all these solutions. We came up with 3. And we said, look, there are 3 things that really no solution solves for this kind of collaboration work. One is structure. So just having a structure to engage with people in makes things so much easier. And when you're in person, the structure is a table and chairs and a whiteboard and a couch that exists on the other side of the room. And maybe you have another room that hangs off of it, and there's a floor underneath you that's a common area. And all of that structure tells us how to engage with one another. But when all of it becomes links and meeting invites and emails and threads, all that structure kind of goes away. So we said that's one thing. Second is visibility, because when you have a team of 15, 20 people, maybe 8 of whom you knew before you even showed up, there could be one conversation going on with everybody, or there could be 10 different conversations happening across these different groups. And having visibility into all of those, just being able to look around the room, just gives you so much context of the work that's going on and tells you how to engage. So that was the second, is visibility. And then third was just how easy it is to jump to interact with somebody, because you can have just a quick eye contact or a hand gesture or passing a note to somebody or pulling somebody over to a side conversation to say, hey, let me tell you what I just heard from this company in this call. And in virtually just figuring out how you do that, it may only take a few minutes, but it's enough friction that most of the 5-minute conversations don't happen, or they become 30-minute conversations that happen a day later because somebody sends a meeting invite. So we said, okay, these 3 things, structure, visibility, and connection, if we can solve them, then you know what? I think we could run a sprint week on it. I think it would work. We weren't even thinking about if there was a business there. We then we said we have 3 weeks to do it. We got a designer and 2 engineers, worked insane hours for 3 full weeks, built a prototype, ran sprint week on it, and went from canceling it to it ended up being the most successful sprint week high alpha I'd ever run. They started 4 companies came out of the week, 4 companies they've never had one that produced 4 companies before, with people in their kitchens, in their bedrooms, in their home offices, juggling kids, and 4 companies that wouldn't have existed if we hadn't said what if and built that prototype. From there, it just kind of took off because people looked at it, saw what we had built, didn't think about it in the same terms we did, but realized like the things this solves for can help us in our problem where we're trying to get work done virtually, and started reaching out. We started catching them saying, yeah, I think I can solve this one. I think I can solve that one. Signed a bunch of contracts, and we've been kind of off and running since then. So that's really been the whole first year.
That's amazing. What a story. So I love this sprint week idea, just putting some smart people together and saying, go. Wow, that's cool. I mean, you guys should film this. I could totally see that. That's kind of like Restaurant Impossible. You got 48 hours to turn around a restaurant. You got a week to build a software company. That's incredible. So essentially, you kind of did a sprint week to build Filo, and then ran sprint week with it.
Yeah, it was that we weren't even thinking about there was a company here because we're like, look, there may be 2 B2B venture studios who focus on SaaS in the world who run sprint weeks. Like, there's not a market for this. We're just let's just not cancel sprint week. And it was a few days before sprint week even started. We had the 4 teams, we had the 4 ideas we were going to run through it. And one of the partners of High Alpha, a good friend and mentor of mine, a guy named Christian Anderson, pulled me aside and said, hey, Matt, we've been kind of sharing a little bit about what we're doing with other people, and they're expressing interest and they think it's super interesting. Do you want to not only run sprint week, but lead a sprint week team to evaluate if there's a business here? So we had a few days to try to pull that together. So we not only ran sprint week, we ran a team focusing on the idea that was actually powering sprint week to see if there was a business there. It took us a few weeks of debating because we still weren't convinced, but really it ended up, we had enough people reach out to us and want to use it that we kind of said we have to at least take a run. So yeah, that was a good week. I ended up with 5 teams and started 4 companies.
That's amazing. I absolutely love that story. So why are online collaborative space so important? I mean, there's a lot of people obviously these days working from home, or now they've realized remote works. So these spaces, I feel like they're something that kind of are needed, but why do you feel like they're so important?
I mean, I think when it comes down to it, it really comes down to those 3 things, and having a structure to engage within, having the visibility. And the cool thing about software is it makes these things and it expands them so much further than what even exists in the physical world. Because we're in software, we can not only provide real-time visibility of everything that's happening, we can provide visibility of everything that's happened in the past. So you can quickly get caught up. And through some things we're developing, we'll be able to show some visibility of what is coming up in the future. So whether you think of a cross-functional group working on a project who simply needs a war room in order to get something done, or whether you are a group of 100 people running a sprint week, or you are a company of 1,600 people who they weren't spending, you think of sales kickoffs, people who bring 1,600 people together for a sales kickoff and probably spend $3 to $5 million doing that a year aren't just doing that so that you can show up in a room and watch somebody stand on a stage and present to them. They were doing it because there were real problems being solved and worked through during that week with everybody together. So in all of these facets, we have one customer, a very well-known organization, who their challenge was, we need a virtual courtroom. because they have this rules process. And when there's a violation, they have to put them through a true adjudication process. And even when they thought about how the motions of those things happen between everybody together in a really structured way, break out and decide conversations to be able to talk about what just happened in the hearing, how do you strategize and come back together? It's the same three things that really make all of that essentially make people give up on the part of collaboration when they're doing it virtually, unless you already have those strong ties and relationships. If you're a team of 5 people, you already have strong ties, you can survive, and we've shown you can really thrive virtually. Once you start to get outside of that, it's a big challenge.
Yeah, no kidding. So a lot of the people listening to this show are thinking about sales. That's kind of our focus. So how can sales teams that are remote, how can they develop better relationships with each other? And is that even important? What do you say around sales teams with this virtual relationship?
This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I have, going back to when I joined ExactTarget in 2009, I've worked in strategic sales, pre-sales, selling my own stuff as an entrepreneur, helping support and create entire structures around a sales team to enable them at Cheetah Digital, and sales enablement being a part of my team. And when you think about what sales is, like we talk about, a lot of our passion is around solving problems. Real sales is just solving problems, right? It's working with a prospect, working with a customer, but identifying what is the problem they're feeling, what is the pain that's there, and how do the service product, hard product, software product, whatever it is that you bring to the table, how can that be used to solve their problem? And you work collaboratively with them. There's sales that's not that. That is not what I get excited about. And I typically advise people, if you're in a place you're not solving people's problems, go find another company where you can. But it's all about solving problems together. Now, You think about what it takes in order to solve those problems. It is very much a team sport in order to get that done. If you think internally, first you have to understand what is the market you're going after, what are their problems look like in general, how do your solutions fit into those. As an organization, you have 1,600 people. How do you get everybody understanding all of that in the same way that you can go out with the same message to customers and then be able to sell things in a way that when it comes to the services side of the house to stand things up, you're truly solving those problems. So the relationships that it takes in order to get that done, that is learning from your peers, because everybody's facing challenges in different ways. It's knowing who to lean on when you have a question. What is your internal support team when you run into a challenge with a customer that you don't really understand because you're not highly technical? Who do you go to for support? Where do you go to get that support? Do you have a relationship with them that they'll answer you? And then how do you really understand what's happening with your customer or prospect? Understand the problem first, get the solution, apply it. All of that takes an entire team of people, especially at scale. So we've served some very large organizations to very small ones on kickoffs who said, look, we spent this much money on kickoffs because it wasn't just about hearing the message from the CEO. It was about people running into each other in the hallway and sharing stories around, let me tell you about this deal I won. Let me tell you about this deal I lost that I cried about for a week because we put so much effort into it. Let me tell you about the challenges I'm hearing from my customers and how those could be used to better educate you. It's about teams getting together on their own and strategizing, what additional support do we need? We need to go back to the organization. Are we getting the leads that we need? Do people know who we are? Do we have the brand awareness? What's our plan to make plan over the last year? How's that going to result in me getting paid? Because I have a family to support. That's the real reason these kickoffs, people spend so much money on them. So a lot of organizations who said, everything I'm seeing out there are just live streams of chat on the side. This isn't why we do this. So these need to be collaborative events. We stood up a lot of them and it worked. And then it kind of dovetailed from there to many versions of how does that look on a quarterly basis with running QBRs with teams? What is it in terms of onboarding new sales reps and salespeople and getting them ramped up and forming those relationships as fast as possible? How do we roll out a new product that we're launching or talk about this company we're going to acquire and get everybody on the same page about why and what problem it solves, all the way to we've got one very large enterprise who is using it to say, all right, now how do I extend this to my customers and prospects? Because how do I get, in order to really solve the problem, I need to get 20 of them together for 4 straight hours. And we're going to bring in consultants. These are really complex problems, big contracts. And by previously, we would all fly someplace in order to make that happen. But how do I do that? Why should we have to fly someplace? Man, I could set one of these things up. And by the way, prospect loves it. Feels like we're hearing them, solving their problem. It accelerates my deal by months because I just got a bunch of work done in a 4-hour period that would have taken a long time. I helped my champion internally get consensus by bringing their stakeholders together. Sales is really all collaboration. So I'm really stoked about that path forward.
Absolutely. I'm glad you see it that way. And I want to ask you, speaking of sales, I love your startup story, but how'd you take that next step? What did you do early to win some of your first few customers? How did you bring them on board? What was your go-to-market, and how did you scale from there?
It all started for us, and because of how we got started, so Techstars we were so blessed. Techstars is one of the most innovative groups in the world who work with startups, accelerate startups, ended up being our very first customer. They got exposed to us during the sprint week, and they came to us and said, hey, what you just did in 3 days, we have a 3-month version of that. And this accelerator coming up. There was one specific accelerator. Can we use this? And we need to collaborate. We need to do all the things you did during sprint week, just spread out. So we stood up an environment for them. Well, in those accelerators, they have mentors that come in and mentor them. Those mentors are leaders in organizations around the world. They have problems. They saw it. They then came inbound to us. And we had to say early on, all right, we have all these different use cases coming to us, feeling like we can solve their problem. Are we going to solve all of them? Are we going to pick one and just narrow in on that? And all the conventional wisdom says, pick one and narrow in on it. And we took a little bit different approach. We said, hey, if we have this inbound and we can catch it and we think we can solve their problem, what if we just spent the first year obsessing over over these customers, doing things that don't scale, doing things that don't seem like they make a whole lot of sense, but just hyper serving them. And let's understand if what we built really can solve other people's problems in all these markets. That's either going to help us narrow in, or it's going to realize we can actually build something that serves a lot of different people. So that's one of the core tenets we've built our company on, is just make customers better and obsess over them. So we decided to say yes to most of them. We've been mostly successful in getting all of them. I won't say every single one, but that was one of the biggest things we did early on, was just thinking through, okay, who do we say yes to and who do we not, and why are we choosing that, and what would make us change that path. And then it was, all right, let's just execute until we see something telling us something different.
I love it. That's fantastic. I love that you said, hey, it'd be smart to just pick one of these, but nope, we're going to solve it and make it happen for everybody. Because I think in the early days, if you have an opportunity to get some big deals in the door, you got to take it. You've got to make it happen. So I think that's fantastic.
Look, we're going to start narrowing in more now, but we learned so much more over the first year by working hand-on with customers. Like, get off the whiteboard, get out of the theoretical, get into the real. And there's nothing more real than saying, here's what we can do for you. Here's a contract. Are you willing to pay this and sign up for these terms in order to have us solve your problem? Try to solve that problem for them, and then come back to them afterwards and say, okay, here's an agreement to do this ongoing. And you can tell me everything was great and wonderful. Are you willing to sign up to stay a customer of ours and solidify this relationship? And I think we learned more. We may not have gotten as much traction in the first year as somebody else who just narrowed in and said, I'm going to gobble up as much real estate in one area as possible. We've learned way more than everybody else has. And I think it's going to set us up here for the next 5 or 10.
Yeah, I would say the future looks bright when you've got that and you kind of built that foundational year. So what advice would you give, Matt, to new software founders who are starting out? What can they do to help their companies not only accelerate and grow, but also make sure that, probably they're going to be a remote team, that they stay collaborative?
It's a great question. First of all, caveat, because I've been a founder twice. every company is incredibly different. Every founder is different. Every team is different. So I'd say anything I say, if it's helpful, fantastic. If it's not, throw it to the side and be you and do your own thing. But how we've built our entire team is based on a few tenets. One, I just mentioned, make customers better. Like, that doesn't mean do what customers say. That doesn't mean just say yes to everything. It means in every situation, think, what do I need to do in this situation in order to make a customer better at what they're trying to do? So just obsessing over that. Second is speed. Like, just move fast. There's so many problems that you're going to run into, and you can be at the whiteboard all day long talking theoreticals, and it may make you feel better, but just get the feet moving and move fast, learn quickly, and move on. So the move fast is one we talk a lot about on our team, being brave. Part of moving fast is, in getting in the real world, is being brave to put that contract in front of somebody, to be 80% sure you can solve their problem, but throw yourself into it knowing that you may fall on your face. We all fall on our face all the time. So I do multiple times, probably every single day, but just be brave, get started. So focus on customers, move fast, be brave. Always expect that you're going to win. No, there's a risk, but just expect that you're going to win and you're going to do good going in. But when you don't and you fall on your face, the last one we always talk about is showing grace to one another, because you take a risk. You're not going to do something meaningful without taking a risk. You take a risk, you're moving fast, you fall on your face, pick the person up, dust them off, say, well, that sucked. What do we learn from it? Spend a few minutes thinking about what you learned from it, then put it behind you and move on to the next one. And if you can do that, you build a pretty good team. So I think we're on the right path there, but those are kind of the tenets we're building everything on.
I love it. That's definitely fantastic advice. I would agree with all of it. Matt, this is awesome. I've learned a lot. And I love that you say that that's one of the biggest things about podcasts. You can learn so much. Well, I have for sure. How can our audience learn more about you and Filo?
Yeah, first of all, from our website, so philo.co, so philo.co. Go to our website, check us out. If you have a problem and trying to figure out how do you get people together, how do you help them really collaborate, you have things you need to solve without flying people around, reach out. We'd love to talk to you and figure out how we can help. On social at meet Filo, all one word, on both Twitter as well as Instagram. And then always find for me in Twitter, Compton MC, at Compton MC, reach out, share cool things. That's kind of where I live and get a lot of my information as well. So yeah, would love to talk to you.
Perfect. We'll put all that in the show notes or in the YouTube description for anybody watching. But Matt, this has been awesome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt. This is a lot of fun.
Likewise. And thank you all for listening and watching. Really glad to have you here. Make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss out on any amazing creators and innovators like Matt. We're bringing them to you every single week. Go ahead and hit subscribe and let us know if you like the show. Like and rate, and we'll be able to make sure we're getting you the best of the best. Thank you very much for coming, and we will see you next time. Take care.